All right, Celtics fans. Well, your Boston Celtics did what they do best at the trade deadline, which is absolutely nothing. Now, I can't help but feel like this rant is a little familiar. Oh, right, it's the same rant I did last year and probably the year before that. Although the year before that, they got Isaiah Thomas, so they actually did do something. This year, they literally did nothing. No Paul George, no Jimmy Butler, no rebounder, no Tyson Chandler or even Andrew Bogut. They did nothing. The 76ers made more moves than they did. The Dallas Mavericks made more moves than they did. And I don't think either of those teams are going anywhere anytime soon. But the Celtics, who are on the cusp, they're the 2 seed. I don't know if they're going to finish the season as the 2 seed in the East, but they're up there in the standings. They have a really good record. I'm not going to go so far as to say they have a really good team, and I'll explain that in a minute. But, yeah, Celtics, again, I don't know if I'm as mad as I was last year at this time, just because I don't know. And the funny thing is about last year is I was mad they didn't get Al Horford, and then they ended up getting him in the offseason. And maybe I don't know. I didn't really follow the Atlanta Hawks. I thought Al Horford was, really good. He's really not that good. Maybe I'm just not watching the games where he's good, but I think I saw he's averaging, 15 points a game, and that even seems high. Because every time I watch him, he gets, 10 points and, 5 rebounds. Al Horford, to me, does not impress me that much. I hear he was a max contract player. I'm like, oh, he must be really good then. And granted, by name recognition, he was good. Al Horford. Ooh, the Celtics got Al Horford. Obviously you wanted Kevin Durant, but hey, we got Al Horford. And I'm like, is this team really that much better than when we had whoever we had? I still miss Jared Solinger, but that's just me. Really with this team, and as I mentioned, the team has a good record, the team is playing well, but I'm going to pump the brakes here when I say that they're one player away from a championship contender, just because, and again, I'm not trying to take away from what the Celtics have done the last year plus, the last couple of years really, but you look at the teams the Celtics beat, and to me that's kind of the discouraging thing about the NBA. You really only have 2 or 3 really good teams. You can say that about the NFL too, which is why I find kind of both those leagues boring, especially the NBA, though, because you have 2 teams who are probably going to be in the championship. It's going to be, the Cavaliers and the Warriors. Maybe the Spurs get in there. I can't think of anyone else in the East that's going to get in there. So you got these few good teams, and then you got about 20 just awful teams. You got the Timberwolves, the Kings, who the Celtics lost to somehow, the Sixers, the Nets, the Knicks. Even the Bulls aren't really that good. You go through the list, there's a ton of mediocre teams in the league. So the Celtics are beating those mediocre teams, and that's good. They should beat them. They are better than, your Sixers and your Magic and your other mediocre teams. God, there's a ton of freaking lousy teams in the NBA right now. And then there's your okay teams who are where the Celtics are. They're better than the mediocre teams, but does that mean they're going to win? Probably not. So, having said all that, I'm glad the Celtics are where they are. A few years ago, I didn't think I'd be saying they're in the playoff hunt to this degree. They went from being an 8 seed to a 3 seed, although last year they fell at the last second, which is why I'm not really, the Celtics are the 2 seed now. I think if the Celtics hold on to that 2 seed, they will win the first round of the playoffs, just because 2 seeds usually win, because they'll probably play a Pacers team or Bulls or something. And again, I'm not a big NBA junkie. I don't know all the random players. I heard they were in on some really random players that were decent players. I don't really know. I know the Paul Georges of the world. I know the Jimmy Butlers. I know those players. I'm not even that familiar with them, but I know that they're good players. And I don't know if either of them would have made them a really great team. I think they would have made them a better team. And I'm a bit discouraged that they're just going to stay with this team. But again, at the same time, I can't really fault Danny Ainge, because it's not you get these players, you're going to beat the Cavs. You're not going to beat the Cavs. And again, that gets back to my whole gripe about the NBA. You got these teams like the Cavs and the Warriors, and before that it was the Heat and the Spurs, and it's just kind of who's going to win. It's kind of boring to watch, especially, it's frustrating as a Celtic fan when you see a team that is decent, It's not like they're the Sixers where you knew they weren't going to win anyway. They're a team that could win if you didn't have, the Warriors and the Spurs and the Cavs. They're a team that's pretty good, and unfortunately, I feel like by the time the Cavs and the Spurs and the Warriors aren't good anymore, the Celtics won't be good either. I feel like there is a short-term, I don't even want to say contending thing, because they're not really contending, but there's a short-term window for the Celtics to be this good. Not that they're even that great, but Isaiah Thomas is I think he's close to 30, Al Horford's 31. These players aren't going to be in their prime very long. I mean, they'll be good for probably 5 or 6 more years. But how good does that make you? You know, having Isaiah Thomas and Al Horford at full strength. I mean, it's not like you have Kevin Durant on the team. So, again, it is what it is. I hear about these draft picks. The Celtics hold on to them year after year. They got Jaylen Brown last year, and that didn't really excite me. I'm not even a big draft junkie, but I knew that Jaylen Brown wasn't, a third pick. But, again, whatever. This year, they'll probably be in the lottery again to get, hopefully, the first pick. Even if they do, who are they going to get? I feel like the Celtics haven't drafted a big-time, franchise player since Paul Pierce, and Paul Pierce wasn't even a number 1 pick. I think he was number 10 or something. So just because you don't get the number 1 pick doesn't mean you can't get a good player. But I just feel like the Celtics haven't gotten a lot of those guys. They've drafted some okay players over the years. Kelly Olynyk, Marcus Smart recently, Jaylen Brown. We don't really know what he is yet. So, I mean, they can draft some decent players, but I'm not going to bank it all on that. If I have a chance to get a Jimmy Butler or an established player, and all I have to do is trade a pick that could be the next, Fab Melo, I mean, yeah, I'll do that, Yeah, it could be the next LeBron James, but how many LeBron Jameses are there? I mean, how many of those impact players are there? Maybe once every 5 to 10 drafts do you get a player like that, and the chances of the Celtics getting him are 0 to none, even when they have a lottery pick. So, again, that's kind of why I wish Ainge had done more at the trade deadline, because there aren't too many ways to improve your team. You had an opportunity to do it, and you didn't do it. But, it's the NBA. It's kind of a vicious cycle of, how good can you really get. But, that's my thoughts on the trade deadline. I'd love to hear from other Celtics fans if you think they should have done more at the trade deadline or anything. If you think they'll do anything on draft night, I personally don't. I think they're just going to take their pick, whoever it is, and move on. I don't see any big deals there. And, I mean, I would have wanted DeMarcus Cousins, personally. He was a better player who was available. But Celtics didn't even bother with him. I get kind of mad about that, but whatever. I mean, Jimmy Butler and Paul George were nice. I mean, maybe they're saving that pick for, Russell Westbrook or somebody really good. I don't think they'll be available, but, if they hold on to their pick and they get somebody really good like that, then I can see them waiting. But right now, I'm a little mad that they didn't pull the trigger on at least one trade. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on the Celtics trading deadline. We'll see what the Celtics do in the second half of the season, and I will talk to you later.